Today we have three exciting companies here to present. And first out, we have Pila Pharma and Gustav H, the head of investor relations. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's very nice to be here with Red Eye again on a pretty chilly April morning. My name is Gustav. I'm the head of investor relations at Pila Pharma, and we are in the business of making a oral tablet solution for type 2 diabetes and potentially obesity and cardiovascular disease. We've presented here many times before, so most of you have probably heard our CEO and founder Dorte talking. If you would like to have a more detailed, deep down, kind of in-depth knowledge of the company, you're welcome to come back to the website or some of our previous interviews here, where we focus a little bit more on the technical aspects of the drug, whereas today I will focus a bit more on the trends that we see in the market and how we can position ourselves for the purpose and benefit of course, patients, but equally so investors. So we are making a small molecule drug for the treatment of diabetes. This is a TRPV1 antagonist. This is a very untraditional target for diabetes. It has traditionally been associated with treatments of pain and inflammation. So we have kind of repurposed this drug to work out in diabetes. It's a drug that was manufactured by Bayer back in the day, and we have since taken it over. We have done 2 phase 2A trials to determine the safety of this drug. The drug has previously been associated with some side effects, but we can see that this drug is very well tolerated, and so far it's promising results for us. The limitations we've had with this kind of molecule has been that the toxicology package that we bought was only for 1 month. This has some limitations in the sense of how long trials we can actually run. So we have run 2 phase 2A trials so far, as I said, mostly to determine safety. Next up, we will have another phase 2A trial in order to determine which level will be the best going forward for a pivotal phase 2B trial. This will be conducted in overweight type 2 diabetics, and of course, depending on how large we want to scale it, we hope to have good readouts on more than the normal normal things we look at when we determine efficacy in type 2 diabetes. It would be great if we could have, of course, positive outcomes for body weight and potentially for more heart protective capabilities. So I just want to touch upon what we do and of course why we do it. And I think everyone is starting to realize how big of a pandemic this obesity is becoming. And this we see here on this slide is it's a prevalence statistics basically showcasing that in 2035 about 1/4 of the whole planet will be considered obese. And of course this comes with a lot of associated risk factors such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, liver disease, kidney disease, you name it. It's all a part of this massive metabolic syndrome which is affected when you have excess fat in your body. And of course, as we see, diabetes is the same. The total amount of people with diabetes on the global basis is rising. We can see, however, that in the western part of the world, it's actually not as drastic of an increase as we see in some of the less developed countries. And this, of course, is significant because it means that going forward, we will have a lot more diabetics and overweight diabetics in parts of the world that cannot afford the properly good medicines that we see on the market today. So there will be need for medication that can help patients, whether they are on the savanna in Africa or in the jungle, and can help them regulate their blood glucose levels, as well as potentially more benefits. This slide we've shown in the past here with Red Eye as well, and it's from our last trial where we just on a 1 month dose we determined that there is actually a really nice improvement in insulin secretion. So this is of course something that we would like to see continue over the next trial. The phase 2B will be of course 3 months. So with a long-term proof of improved insulin secretion, that will give us a good foundation if we want to make a partnership with a pharmaceutical company. This is actually a much more interesting slide in my opinion, because It's a slide basically showcasing a reduction in a heart failure biomarker called ANP. So this is some data that we managed to get analyzed last year, and it's actually probably the best data that we have. This is data that basically showcase that after a month's treatment, you have a significantly reduced risk of heart failure if you take our drug. So the thing about heart failure and cardiovascular disease, of course, is a very important factor for doctors when they have to prescribe new drugs. So having a positive cardiovascular profile will be very, very positive for us when we have to go and negotiate with a pharmaceutical company to tell them that this is a really attractive drug for doctors. And so you can, of course, treat more patients and make more money. This is a slide I made myself, and of course it's a little bit rough in the edges, but it just basically showcases that what we see for this gold rush within obesity. Whilst we are not an obesity company per se, that is to mean that we don't have obesity data yet, we of course can see that everyone is talking about obesity, and obesity being the larger of these trends, the mega trends that we see on a global basis. And of course we have Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk being the dominant companies here, but we have a whole range of companies coming in, and everyone that is not in the game will want to be in the game. And so we find this really interesting because, and this is a slide, and it may be a little bit rough as well on the graphics, but it's basically to showcase that we can already see now that the market is going away from GLP-1s alone and more towards GLP-1s combined with other molecules to get positive factors on something other than just weight reduction. And we see a bunch of companies coming in with a lot of new data and a lot of late-stage clinical trials that could be very interesting to see how that unfolds. Some of these are actually already been bought up. Carmot was bought by Roche, and I believe Versanis was bought by Eli Lilly. So we can already see that the guys who are already on the market, they're buying up to protect themselves from future competition. And the ones that are not on the market, they will want to get in on the action and actually make acquisitions to make themselves players in the next years. Yeah, and these are like just perfect examples as well of the trend that we see, that there are so many small molecules and small companies that are getting bought up now for companies to solidify themselves and to make themselves attractive and to showcase to their investors that they are looking to be in this race and in this market for the next 10 to 20 years until we have a situation where there's not an unmet need per se anymore. But right now it seems as if that the market is so abundant that the most pharma companies cannot even follow the necessary production needs right now. This one I found interesting. I just wanted to take this with us as well today because we are now starting to see companies buying up other companies as well, specifically within the cardiovascular field, with companies that have projects with heart protective benefits are getting bought up. And I personally anticipate that this is for the purpose of combining with other molecules in order to see if you can make super drugs, if you will, where you have really strong weight gain, but also very good heart protective effects. And this slide I find was a little bit funny because we used to be, together with Philip here, who introduced me, we used to have him as our analyst. And a couple years ago, he wrote as one of the threats that cardiovascular benefits considered when medication is chosen. So we actually believe that we have turned this one threat into an opportunity or a strength, if you will, because we do have the heart failure data, which of course we need to explore more on a longer duration and on higher doses. But there's actually more and more coming together for this drug that sort of indicates that it may be more of a cardiovascular drug than necessarily a diabetes drug. This is of course up for interpretation, but we can definitely see that it has a very nice cardiovascular profile. A little bit about our funding needs. So we are in 2024 right now, and we raised some money in November. This money is enough to conduct the next trial, which is the dose escalation trial, where we need to determine which dose is the best to go forward. This is already funded. However, this is a very slim version. So ideally, it would be good for us to bolster the bank a little bit more in order to get a really significant readout and possibly explore more opportunities. And of course, with obesity or with diabetes in general, we see that outcome trials are getting very expensive. Of course, if you adjust for inflation and exchange rates as well, it's not an easy market to raise money in. But we do anticipate that with time we will need to raise upwards of 500 million Swedish kronor if we want to take it to market ourselves. We do see very high interest, especially from Asian pharmaceutical companies, regarding this indication for the purpose of treating diabetes. What has been relatively unknown for some has been that in Asia, a lot of people develop diabetes but are not necessarily obese. So they are very interested, of course, in making licensing agreement for their individual markets, and this is, of course, something that we assess as an opportunity. We do see this as a potential already sometime in 2025 when we should be done with the dose escalation trial. Alternatively, we will likely go and raise capital on the stock exchange in order to make a longer phase 2b trial with quite a number of patients. This will require a significant amount of funding. Theoretically, we could make a partnership or find alternative sources of funding. But of course, this will be a costly affair. We're anticipating around 150 million Swedish kronor. And as far as we know, prior to this whole obesity concept being a very global thing, we had strong indications that there would be interest from pharma upon successful completion of a phase 2b with diabetes data. And this is just to showcase one last little slide here I just pulled this morning. It's just to showcase the companies which you see in the yellow and the purple line here. That's Zealand Pharma and Gubra. Is that as soon as they get to the point where they have a sniff of efficacy on obesity, their stock price just goes straight up almost. So that has been very attractive business case for many investors. And of course, we hope that in 1 or 2 years, the blue dotted line, which is Pila, we will be having a more of an upward trend than we've had the last couple of years. And science board, we have a very strong science board. We have well-known diabetes experts and Jens Ulholst, who discovered GLP-1. So we are very comfortable having them around to guide us in the future. And that's about it. So thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Gustav, for your presentation. I guess we could start then a little bit broader, as you have touched upon in your presentation. But I mean, so GLP-1s and not least obesity and type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular events have been a strong trend in the past years in this sector. And there's been a significant cash inflow into these big pharma companies. And you mentioned a few of them in your presentation. But it would be interesting to hear if you have noted maybe an impact in potential partnering discussions at its point or something along these lines.
We definitely see partnering interest from a lot more companies than in the past. In the past, it used to be very segmented, so you'd have a very specific amount of companies that would work within type 2 diabetes, which was the indication that we've always gone with. Nowadays, as I mentioned as well, it appears to be kind of a gold rush where everyone wants to be in obesity and obesity-related diseases and disorders. So that makes it very interesting that we see meeting requests from both from mid-sized pharma and for big pharma, at least for the purpose of getting to know our project and hear how far we are and maybe understand the science a little bit more. And we anticipate that will only get stronger the better the results will hopefully get with time.
Right, and you also touched upon it, but I mean, combination therapy towards these indications has obviously emerged as something that is being evaluated, and we've seen several acquisitions of larger companies. Have you had any internal discussions in Pila in what are the potential for your molecule, which, as you mentioned, has a sort of different or unconventional target in this indication? What are the outlook?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to speculate because, of course, you can look at the profile of the drug and especially the side effects. We've heard from companies that they find it interesting because it has a very different side effect profile than GLP-1s, which is, of course, very much one of the topics of debate, because, you know, if this is meant for lifetime treatment of patients, then it's maybe not ideal if they have chronic diarrhea or chronic constipation. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would not prefer that. So, I mean, a drug like ours, which is associated with a slightly, slight increase in body temperature, I think at least for some patients, they would find that interesting. For the purpose of combination, I mean, I'm not a chemist, so I'm not going to be able to tell you whether or not a certain combination is possible. But of course, I mean, internally we're looking at all the options that we have in order to make this project go forward and create products that could be of value to patients and of course of value to our shareholders.
Right, and along these lines as well, I mean, Novo Nordisk is the obvious example most people think about looking at this market, and I mean, it has become such an integrated and large part of Denmark and Copenhagen and this entire industry. And I mean, Pila is located in Malmö, so it's very nearby. But would you say that this has change sort of the outlook in the near term, what has happened the past few years? I mean, looking at their reach and
Yes and no. I think to some extent it's been good because it has brought a lot of attention and a lot of investor money back into a field that was quite segmented in the past. At least in Denmark, of course, I mean, we have 3 companies that are now pretty far in terms of obesity drugs, and Novo, of course, is one of the big ones on the market. So they bring a lot of attention, of course. Then it's a bit difficult for smaller companies like us to get spotlight. But however, I do think that we have a certain profile that attracts people because, of course, I mean, you can buy about 1,000 Pila shares for the price of one Novo Nordisk share as well. So it's more accessible for the normal investor. That is also to say that, you know, of course, they are an established company whilst we're still in the process of development. And so we anticipate, of course, that, you know, hopefully with time this can help us generate some awareness about our existence, and hopefully that will enable us to get more shareholders with time. So
right. And also I noted that you have actually, let's say, broadened your pipeline, so to speak. Your molecule you have discovered also seems potential to have an effect in another indication. Could you give us a few words about this?
This is aorta, abdominal aorta aneurysm, and I mean, it's I can't go into the details, but actually this was a research project that the University in Uppsala came to us and asked about, and around the same time our CEO Dorte, who's actually she's in France right now with her father, but the reason we took on the project was that her father actually got it. So there was a very strong personal motive to start a research collaboration to address whether our drug could be beneficial for this specific indication. We're not cardiology experts by any means, but we have heard that this specific indication actually kills about 1% of all men globally. So that's quite strong, and I mean, there's no treatments on the market, so it would be very attractive as well if it came out well in the research study for sure. But yeah, I mean, I can't tell you that much more right now because it's still in the very early stages.
Right, got it. And I mean, sort of the $1,000 questions always when we have a biotech company here is, of course, everybody wants a partner, and most people have different partnering strategies.
Sure.
And given, as we've discussed, the cash inflow into these companies that would be potential licensees here, what would you say is your take on partnering strategy? What sort of partner would you prefer?
I mean that's of course up for internal discussion, and we need to look at whether we believe this should be a drug which we can sell off the rights for global partnership, or whether it makes sense to go for more strategic partnerships on a regional basis. And there's pros and cons to both, of course. In the end, it's we will likely go with the decision that gets the drug the furthest and the quickest to market. It has been a few challenging years with limited access to capital. So, you know, partnering opportunities arising now would be very interesting for the purpose, of course, of non-dilutive funding to propel the company forward and not make it a worse experience than it has been for some investors who have come in and have seen the share price go down so much. I mean, it's not ideal. So we're looking at all opportunities, I would say.
Perfect. So thanks a lot for these clarifications, and I wish you all the luck in the future.
Thank you.